TVOT.
Thanks for having me. I know that we are standing between you and lunch, so I really appreciate everyone for sticking around for this panel. And I'm hoping that we can figure out the best way to hand the mics around since we're a little spread out. But today's session is going to be about social TV. It's going to be about how you use social to help build audiences. Hopefully we'll talk about some best practices and what works, what doesn't. We have a good panel which includes some technology providers and also some of the folks that are providing the content and using those social tools to build audiences. So I just want to start by going down the line here, and if everybody could just briefly introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about what you do and how you fit into the ecosystem.
Sure. Hi. I'm Todd Greene. I'm the CEO of Loyalize. Loyalize launched about 5 weeks ago. We are an audience participation company. We sell a white label platform. There are 3 components to it. The first, and probably the part that's getting the most excitement, is our real-time participation platform. So it's this ability to take large nationwide audiences, allow them to participate in real time around what they're watching. So by real time, I mean they could be on their tablets or phones, taking polls, playing trivia, and as they're entering the polls, they're watching the bars change as the entire audiences participate. Beyond polls and trivia, we have things like polling an entire audience or watching sort of a focus group for things like a political debate, games like Smack Talk, which is a game for watching live sporting events, and a variety of other brandable and skinnable experiences that are real-time for large audiences on their tablets and phones. The second piece that we do is a loyalty platform. So as they're playing these things, they're winning coins, points, badges, and redeeming those coins in a redemption store, which is stocked full of promotional rewards that all of you in the audience might stock with. And the third thing we do are analytics. So the ability to slice and dice all this data, including real-time analytics. So as you launch your new TV show and people start participating on their tablets and their phones, you can watch what's happening in real time. You can see the people participating, see what they're doing. So that's the full realm of what we do, and I'll pass it on.
Hi, I'm Somrat Miyogi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Miso. We are a social TV platform that's connecting people around the things that they watch. So people can engage while they watch TV, not only with their friends, but the community at large. And we're on multiple platforms, and we're funded by Google Ventures and Hearst Interactive.
My name is Fraser Kelton. I'm the COO at GetGlue. We're a social entertainment service. Users share what they're watching, what they're listening to, and what they're reading for 3 major reasons. One is the social component, so they connect with fans and friends in real time around what they're watching. The other one is recommendations. So we'll use what you've consumed in the past to show you what you're going to like in the future. And then the third one is rewards. So as you interact with the television show across the season, whether it's Mythbusters on Discovery or I think we're now working with about 50 different media companies, you can level up to different types of rewards.
Great. My name is Amber Harris. I'm Director of Social Media at Discovery Communications, which, as Fraser said, is home to Discovery Channel, Mythbusters, TLC, Animal Planet, and a lot of other networks you're familiar with. We also have a robust digital media business, HowStuffWorks.com, TreeHugger.com, PetFinder.com. I'm a part of a larger team. We're kind of an in-house agency, and we actually manage social media across our networks and for our brands and businesses. We kind of have 4 goals when we do that. Number 1 is building community and engagement around our brands. That's job number 1, and part of that includes rewarding our fans and super fans, which is why we're really excited about the social TV space. Beyond that, obviously driving tune-in, big goal for us, and social's great, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or using some of the emerging platforms. How can we do that? Also driving traffic back to our websites. Facebook is a great generator of traffic and interest in videos and downstream clicks. And then finally, insights. What can we learn about our fans? How can we incorporate that not only into our social campaigns, but also into development of our programming and many other aspects of our business.
Hi, I'm Will Wright. I've actually spent most of my career as a game designer, designing games like SimCity, The Sims, Spore. Started a new startup a couple years ago called the Stupid Fun Club. And, excuse me, we're looking into basically rethinking traditional media in kind of new ways with how evolving the technology platforms are right now, just so rapid. So I'm doing a lot of television work now. We just finished the first season of our first show called Bar Karma on current TV, which was a very heavy audience participation experiment. We have several other shows in development, kind of in a similar vein. Bar Karma basically was something where we actually got internet community involved early on and said, okay, what kind of show do you want to make? What's the genre? You know, who are the characters? How do we cast it? And we got them involved in every creative decision of the show, up to the point of actually writing the pilot and the episodes. And we actually had apps on the web, on iPad, iPhone, where people could actually go in and suggest scene directions for every episode. They would vote on their favorite path. We would then give it to a professional production team who would actually go out and shoot it on a very short time scale. So we were really trying to mesh, you know, the fast-term internet, you know, dynamics with the longer-term television production. But basically, we ended up with a show that the community was totally in charge of at every step of the way.
All right, thanks everybody. I want to start with Will, because a lot of what we think about with social TV happens, you know, after the programming has been done, you know, and connecting with the audiences. But I want to talk a little bit about and start a little bit about, you know, how that production happened, because it was a really interesting project, crowdsourcing, you know, and interacting with the social elements on the web before the show even started. So I was just wondering, you know, if you can talk us through sort of how that project got off the ground and some of the elements about it that, you know, just go a little bit more in depth about that.
Well, you know, really the genesis of the project was the communities I saw building up around the game projects that I had worked on, like The Sims. We had people actually using The Sims to tell stories, hundreds of thousands of these, and share them. But when you look at television or anything like that, you know, we have this tendency to kind of, you know, stick on Twitter feeds and this and that, almost like little add-ons, you know. And you can take a car and, you know, put add-ons to make it faster, more comfortable, whatever, but it's never going to turn into an airplane. You know, you have to kind of back up and rethink from the very beginning. Okay, we think of social media as like this kind of up-and-coming thing, but it's a fundamental reorientation around the idea of community. That we're not just entertaining individuals, we're entertaining, in some sense, hive minds of people on the internet that are building communities. You know, I spent a lot of time studying television communities like the Lost community and the dynamics going on there. And there was so much entertainment they were getting from the website of that, just interacting with each other in a peer-to-peer sense, relative to the TV show. And that's true in a lot of these internet communities that, you know, whether it's a game or a TV show, that's really just kind of the catalyst or the grain of sand that the pearl forms around. It's the community's long-term sticky value. So I really want to kind of figure out a way where we could do something that the audience felt like they really did own. They weren't just kind of picking a, you know, an ending out of 2 or 3 endings, but they fundamentally could say we want to do a comedy or a mystery or a drama that could define the characters. You know, so in some sense we wanted to create interactive television, fully interactive television, but with just a long lag time. When they wrote an episode, it would be about 4 to 5 weeks before it went on the air, but they fundamentally could drive that episode wherever they wanted to as a group.
Cool. And also, I want to bring in, you know, this idea of how you use social TV to, you know, amplify the audience or to take an existing audience and connect with it and drive tune in. So just sort of curious what sort of things Discovery's doing around that and interacting with fans that way.
Yeah, I think there are several things we've done. I mean, we've been working with GetGlue for quite a while. So the great thing about GetGlue is that it allows us to tap into audiences that maybe aren't familiar with the platform or aren't as socially savvy, but then take audiences like the Mythbusters, which has, you know, 4 million fans on Facebook, and really kind of supersize the buzz around that show. An example of something that we did see earlier this season, we had a new show on science called An Idiot Abroad, featuring Ricky Gervais and his friend Carl Pilkington. And it was definitely an outside the box, it was a new genre, a new show, played a lot in comedy for the network. And we recognized that there were great moments around that, people wanted to connect around that. And so what we were able to do is launch episodic stickers with GetGlue, and what we saw is week over week, we could get, you know, up to like 30% of our Twitter buzz, so the mentions of the show and Science Channel on Twitter would be coming from check-ins and people either checking in or unlocking a sticker. So the amplification factor there is great. We've also done other things where, you know, also with An Idiot Abroad, where we actually had a marathon, and what we were able to do is just stick the hashtag into our bug and actually stream tweets on air in prime time. And we saw a 3 times increase in buzz around that show versus the previous high in season, and that was just for a marathon of repeats. So I think there's great power. I think a lot of people question whether or not social TV drives tune-in, whether Twitter drives tune-in, Facebook interaction. I think we're still kind of trying to figure that out, and no one has a solid answer to that. But what I can tell you is that it really does amplify any engagement that you have around that, and there's great value in that.
I want to bring in some of the tech guys as well and talk about the idea of check-in. And if you could give an idea of, what users get out of it, when it works, when it doesn't, and how you use the gamification aspect, the check-in aspect, or what other tools you can use to sort of build engagement around these shows.
Yeah, so we all do some of this stuff, so we can pass it around. So we were sort of one of the first to sort of try this. So we launched about March of last year, and it was actually more of an experiment from a company perspective, where, hey, we notice people using mobile devices while they're watching TV. People are on Facebook and Twitter. Will they use another service to share what they watch? And if we think about TV in itself, it's the most natural social topic of conversation. And so we launched, and so people can check in, they can get points, they can unlock badges, and we saw a lot of success with that. But I will say that check-ins don't work for everything. If you really think about, if you step back and say, what's really happening here, people are sharing what they're watching, but the average American watches 5 hours of TV every day. They don't want to share the fact that they watch TV 5 hours of TV every day. I mean, it's not cool to watch lots of TV. That's just a social norm. And so, we're sort of going beyond just this idea of checking in and saying, how do we, what type of social conversations do people really have offline, and how do we enable that through the second screen? So the idea of checking in is still sort of early, but it's not something that it feels natural, but it's still not sort of a broadcast medium. It's still sort of a early step to a longer strategy, which is how do we build community around TV content, and how do we get people to connect with each other around the things that they watch. And so, gamification is sort of a step to sort of encourage that, but we're trying to focus on saying, hey, where the value might be beyond just gamification. It might be relationships and establishing a better understanding between people and enable conversations. And so that's something that we're sort of focusing on beyond just the idea of just points and badges and where that can go. But love to hear what everybody else thinks.
So I think the concept of the check-in being valuable is a funny fallacy, and I think we're very quickly getting over that. The check-in is really nothing more than the lightest weight way to share context. And that context is, for the location-based services, I am here right now on this stage, nervous as can be, talking to all of you guys. Whereas for a social TV app, it's I am watching this. And that, that gesture of sharing that context allows all of the value to be provided in return. Because without that context, you can't really do much with it. I think that the rewards and the gamification will have a short-term appeal to a small amount of people. But I think the real potential of this is if you have broad amount of context from a number of users, you can catalyze the serendipity that has traditionally occurred around television consumption. TV is inherently a social experience. You sit on a couch, you watch the show, you have the irreverent comment, you have the witty comment as it's playing. You're not chatting the whole time through the content, but you're adding those asides. And I think the promise of social TV and that sharing of the context is that you can recreate those irreverent or witty or insightful comments that happen on the couch, regardless of where that couch is located. So whether it's 3 blocks away, you can still see what your friends had to say at the right time for that, that piece of content that you're both watching. And it also doesn't matter on time, right? I mean, if it's 3 blocks away or 3 months later, you can still see what they're saying because you've shared that context of what you're watching.
I mean, for us, it's a little different as a white label platform. We see ourselves, our internal motto really is, we're what happens after you check in. Our focus is really about the participation angle. So that's one of the things. There are other things too about checking in, right? Which is saying, hey, look at me, I'm watching this show, I'm here at this point. And there's all the aspects that the person who just preceded us from Facebook was talking about with respect to sharing that and the uplift you get from that. But on the participation angle, we think that there's ways, especially around things like sports and politics and a variety of other categories, to engage people for a longer period of time. And if you think about it, people are quote-unquote checking in a lot of different ways. If they're going to Twitter and just tweeting about a show, that's an implicit check-in, right? I'm watching, Mythbusters. That's an implicit check-in. There's the specific check-in apps like represented here. But also, in our case, as a white label company, we're talking to customers who are putting apps, just a specific show app on the App Store, right, for their mobile devices. So checking in is implicitly launching that app. So, for us, check-in is just a way to get to the participation, and we like to take over, as a company, the game aspect once you've participated. So that's actually why we just acquired a game company, actually just announced it yesterday, Savage Entertainment, to help us with the gaming angle of participation once you've checked in.
And I would add, we're talking a lot about the app environment, which has been really great. For us, Discovery Channel, we have an iPad app where we actually have a check-in feature integrated there where people can let people know via Twitter and Facebook that they're watching our show in prime time. But I think social TV goes farther back than that. And to your point, it's a hashtag chat, so it's connecting with one of our talent, Grant from Mythbusters, using Grant Chat and talking real time. I think, as Fraser said, the check-in is the start of that, but what's that experience beyond that? And I think for us, that's really the focus, is actually showing somebody that it's, not just an experience we placed online for them, but it's actually interaction. It's with a talent. It's with somebody who's working on the show. It's with other fans and creating a very rich, robust experience.
Just something I want to add to that. For us, we envision a world where we have to, from a social perspective, we have to sort of be integrated into the way people watch TV. Right now, there's a lot of active, hey, let me take my phone out, let me go do something, and then let me go share, and then I put my phone away, and then I take it out again. And I think it's actually a big pain in the ass. And so what we want to do, and we can't do this without working with a lot of the people in this room, is imagine a world where you literally turn on the TV, and the mobile device is already paired with the set-top box. And so I don't have to actively open up an app. And literally, I get a notification saying, hey, looks like you're watching American Idol. And, do you want to share the fact that you're watching American Idol with your friends? And then I participate, I jump into sort of this immersive experience. And as I'm watching, you can actually, from a time-based perspective, be integrated into the way people watch. So someone just performs on TV, someone wants to share, hey, what did you think of someone's performance? Or did you like the song or not the song? We have to get to the point where we're sort of immersed in sort of the social behavior that, actually just TV watching behavior itself. And, we just heard that, we're moving from, the second screen is sort of moving from, we think it's sort of a passive experience, like, hey, TV's passive, and therefore everything you do socially is also passive, but it actually turns out it's actually an active experience. And so how do we determine what people want while they watch TV? And there's no silver bullet here. And, when we launched, we thought the check-in was sort of like, oh yeah, everyone's gonna wanna do this. And it turns out that, hey, it's not cool to share that you watch a lot of TV. And so, that's just the reality. So what types of things do people want to talk about? And how do we make it work for different types of genres? And, we actually launched an experiment called Miso Sync, and where we actually synchronize content as people watch TV. And we did this with Boxy, since we'd like to be able to do this with the cable companies. But we wanted to do this as an experiment. And it turned out that most people, if you look at scripted drama, True Blood, as an example, most people don't want to talk when they're watching True Blood. They just want to watch the content itself. And so there is conversation before and there's conversation after. So as we think about social TV, it's not just, hey, let's just shove a bunch of features into a piece of content. It's about what's natural for that piece of content, and how do we bring that sort of immersed experience to the way people watch TV today.
And I was just going to, sorry.
Well, I just want to kind of point out, we're talking about taking the social aspect of television, which obviously is one of its great strengths, and amplifying that, which is great, but we have this tremendous opportunity that, the real cost in television development is content generation. We've seen time and time again that when you build internet communities in the right way and you give them tools at a high enough leverage point, they can generate amazing amounts of content. And if you can actually work that into, what you're presenting, then the emotional engagement with that, they're now part of the producer. We break down that wall. We're talking right now about, there's still a wall of, we're producing professional content. We're letting them put some graffiti over it with Twitter feeds or whatever, talking, making witty comments. But that's fundamentally different than actually enlisting them in the creation of the fundamental content that you're going to redistribute. And I think that's the opportunity that a lot of these technologies give us, that is just, the next level, that we really should be shooting for. And within a community like that, you'll have kind of a pyramid, the broad base, they just want to lean back, watch the show. There's kind of a medium tier that wants to lean forward a little bit, maybe talk to their friends, do Twitter feeds. But then there's a small group of people that want to lean forward, and they will spend, many hours a week engaged in this in a community setting, creating amazing things that if you can feed those people, they become a point of value for everybody else in that pyramid. So, only 10% of the people can, increase the value for the 100%. And the 100% is actually pretty good at realizing and editorializing and filtering out that 10%.
Cool. I just wanted to talk a little bit about best practices here, and we have some app folks on the panel. We've got the content creators, and just curious where it makes sense to use different social tools, where it makes sense to build an app for a show, or to leverage an existing app for check-in, or to build a website that has social hooks, and when it makes sense to sort of reach out to the community that already exists, whether it be on Facebook, whether it be on Twitter, and what works in terms of engaging audiences in each of those different ways.
I can give you just a quick thought. I mean, it's interesting if you look at a lot of the social TV apps that got buzz over the last, or specific show apps. There's a Grey's Anatomy one, Bones, House. I think there's a few. Those are, I think there's opportunities there, but those aren't the lowest hanging fruit from my perspective, right? If you're engaged in a 1-hour drama, I'm not going to spend a lot of my time looking down at my phone. I just think it's probably not the #1 thing I'm going to be doing. Things like political debates in sports, where it's a 3-hour-long sports thing, or a half-hour-long or 2-hour-long political debate. That's where I really want to be socializing, right? It's a social kind of thing I'm watching. Debates can be horribly boring, but you sure as heck like to yell at the screen and talk to your friends about what a lame candidate that is, right? So I think there are these opportunities that are lower hanging fruit than where we've seen some of these initial show-specific apps. That there's some good opportunities there. There's probably a lot more to talk about there, but
I think I'll just kind of continue what he was saying. I think the first thing to do is think about what content you guys are trying to build a social experience around, and then start from there. Because there's no, I think if you look at sports, it ultimately comes down to what shows have downtime, and not all shows have downtime. Scripted drama is different than a reality show versus a comedy show, and the way people watch. In some cases, you're just immersed and leaning forward, and you want to be you're sort of drawn into the storyline. In sports, you're watching baseball. There's lots of downtime between plays, and so I think as you think about building social experiences, it starts with, well, does this make sense for this piece of content, and then start from there. From our perspective, whether it's our app or working with the companies here, or building your own app from a discovery perspective, we don't have the answer. I think we are being highly experimental in the way we go to market. We are trying lots of things. I can talk about lots of things that we've launched that didn't work. And if you're interested in that, I'm happy to talk about it later, because there's a lot of things that didn't work. But from our perspective, everything that our product does, we've actually opened up an API for, such that we can actually collaborate with the companies that are in this room, and because we cannot do this alone. And I fundamentally mean that. And we need to open everything that our product does. And if you want to build another Miso app using all of our APIs, you can. And so we're not going to have all the answers ourselves. But there's a lot of things to learn as a result of that.
So I think we have a little bit of insight that we can share specifically to your question, Ryan, and that is we also have an API and check-in widgets that people can build off of, and there's about 30 different entertainment companies who are now integrating it into their website or their mobile apps. And the experience that we've heard from these groups is, yes, Discovery and Mythbusters is going to have a very robust community, but the likelihood of them capturing all of the value from that community, if they have a standalone social network within the app, is a fraction of the size of the amount of people who are going to be communicating around that topic on Twitter, on Facebook, on GetGlue, on Miso, on whatever. And so our answer is, have the standalone app and have the content that's focused on your experience and on your fans, but leverage the broader social networks that are out there already, because you are going to be only capturing a fraction of that activity if you limit it to trying to create it yourself. Nobody wants to create another account, right? You have to be a pretty fanatical Doctor Who fan to want to join a standalone Doctor Who social network. But if you are part of Facebook, you're going to enjoy that experience of having a tailored Facebook kind of communication experience within the Doctor Who app itself.
To that point, I just want to ask, why even have a standalone app? I feel like the app community right now It's sort of like, you remember AOL keywords? It's like you'd watch a TV show and the show would say, you know, to talk more with fans, go to AOL keyword, whatever. And I just, you know, wonder what the value is in sending users to a certain standalone place as opposed to engaging with the community where it already exists.
I think for us, from a Discovery Channel perspective, we actually have a network app on the iPad. And what we actually do is we are able to integrate check-in, we're able to integrate social streams and commenting. So it really is a one-stop location. They can surf content from the show, they can watch clips. So I think in that case, it makes a great companion piece for an on-air experience or something that people would follow up with after the fact. But going back to, you know, how do you determine which audiences and which shows you use these social TV experiences around, I think they're all very distinct. For example, for TLC, we have a great successful show called Cake Boss, and it had a spin-off recently called Next Great Baker. We actually decided not to create a whole new separate social community around that. We used the Cake Boss Facebook page, the Twitter account, everything that we had built around that. But what we did for a social TV experience wasn't actually necessarily building out a huge experience. It was literally having Buddy Velastro come on Facebook right after the episode and chat within a Facebook stream. Yeah, it was a little messy and it's not what the platform's built for, but for that audience, trying to get them to a different platform or a chat experience or something like that wasn't gonna work, and that worked for that, you know, that specific show. Now, if it's Shark Week, you know, Shark Week takes over the summer, and we've seen huge amounts of social activity around that. So maybe having a co-viewing app and having additional content pushed out, you know, around that and being able to rewatch those moments you saw would be a great experience. So I think for us, there's sometimes shows that we pick and we try something with, and, you know, to your point, you know, it doesn't work. We think, hey, this audience, if I look at the demographics, I look at the show type, it should fit, but it doesn't. And I think we're always learning about, you know, who our viewers are and what they want, and I think that's kind of the exciting part of social TV right now.
Wait, Will wanted to jump in earlier.
Well, we tend to talk about this social activity as though we're like Martians looking at this from a very detached level, and we don't quite know what's going on, but we know there's some social activity going on that we want to somehow promote. You know, but really, as a game designer, I tend to think more from the inside out. You know, from a psychological perspective, whether it's a game or a television show, the ones, or a book or anything for that matter. The ones that really impact me are the ones that after I played the game or watched the TV show, I'm still thinking about once I walk away from the screen. I'm still, you know, kind of flipping it over in my mind. I may be playing it in my imagination. I mean, in some sense, I've downloaded this world into my imagination, and I'm now playing with it. And so in some sense, the TV show or the game is really a compiler for this imaginary model that I want to carry on. Now, once I walk away from the screen and I'm kind of playing with this middle model, to me, that's going to define the value that an app might have. What are the things I want to do? Do I want to explore that world? Do I want to know more about the characters? Do I want to, you know, try to puzzle solve with other people that watch the show? These are all different activities that I can do with that world of my imagination away from the screen. And the opportunities that you bring up for that, whether it's, again, you know, a game or a TV show or whatnot, that will define the opportunities you have for an app, you know, being successful.
Yeah, let me add to that, because I completely agree. You know, we're talking about is there a value, you know, back to your AOL keywords question, is there a value to have a standalone app on a per show basis? You know, and we're dancing around the question, which is, well, what is the point? And I think it depends on the show, right? There are three things that I think any app can provide, and we're kind of all dancing around here. One is the social piece, right? Are you aggregating feeds from Facebook, Twitter, other places, or creating your own social experience? So there's the social aspect. There's content. You know, a lot of networks have premium content, you know, clips, things like that. And then the third thing are the experiences. And that's the harder part. What kind of creative things can you build inside this standalone app specific to that content that's only going to be for Mythbusters, or only going to be for Shark Week, or only going to be for, you know, the NFL? What are those things? So, you know, if it's just aggregating stuff from Twitter and Facebook, you know, then it's questionable, right? You know, why do I go there versus just going to where I always go, which is Twitter and Facebook? But if you can also provide experiences that are unique and new and branded and specific to the content, and in our case, you know, to you know, pat our company on the back real time, but however those experiences are built, if you can make something that's really exciting around that, then yeah, I think for sure there's a justification for a standalone app, but it needs to have that really unique experience. And I think that's hard. It's, you know, that means either partnering with someone or building it yourself, but it needs to have that for it to be usable and compelling.
Anyone else?
I just want to, add one thing, which is, if you ask the question, what do people want while they watch TV? And you literally ask people, you know, everybody next to yourselves, you're going to actually see 100 responses. Because we're all different, and it depends on the mood, and it depends on the piece of content. It depends whether you're watching live or whether it's time shifted. Like, I think it's very, very different. And so we're all here in this podium kind of, it's a challenge for us that we have to face every day, which is how do we build a platform that works for all of you and make it scale and make it such that not only can we build the core functions, and Facebook's obviously done this. If you look at what we're doing on the social TV space and you look at what Facebook done, Facebook has built photos. They started with a poke button, and then all of a sudden Super Poke came out, and then like, wow, there's like 30,000 poke apps. Like, I think what's going to happen, and sort of where we see the future, is that there's going to be a single sort of social second screen experience, and hopefully it's us, and we'll see where things go. But we envision a future where other people can develop apps on top of the second screen, leveraging the community that's already there. So, for instance, if there's a new TV show coming out and you guys want to create a drinking game or like shoot this thing while you're watching TV, I don't know, or maybe it's like find the pineapple in this specific episode, then developers can develop apps on top of the second screen, and that's where we think the industry is going to go. But we actually need we need to collaborate in order to sort of help realize some of this vision. But the question is, what do people want while they watch TV? And just ask 5 people today and see what they say.
Okay, I want to open it up to the audience in a minute, so get your questions ready. But before I do, I do just want to ask, I feel like when we talk about social TV, it seems like a very sort of bi-coastal thing. The people in Silicon Valley are really excited about it, and the people in New York are really excited about it. People in LA are really excited about it. But what sort of indication do we have that, mainstream users, the people that aren't on the coast, actually use these types of apps and participate?
Well, just a small anecdotal, I'm not a huge sport watcher myself, but a lot of my friends do. Our biz dev guy, whenever there's a college football game on or any sporting event, he's on these forums. Now, forums are old school, right? They've been around as long as the internet. And what does he do? He gets on these forums and he reloads the page. So like every 10 seconds he's pressing reload, and the amount of comments that gets streamed, I don't know, it's probably 1 per second. And so he's trying to follow the conversation, injecting in his comments. It's a terrible user experience, but it's hugely social. And this is not just a bi-coastal crowd. Clearly, these are people from across the country. So, I think it's up to us and the people in this industry to create experiences and apps that are more usable, more fun. But the community is definitely there. Look at the content that gets created for things like live sporting events online. It's just in these old school forums, and we have to take that audience and bring them to a place where we can, better engage them, better activate them, and so on.
To be quite honest, I don't know. We're a startup that's trying to figure this out, and I'm not going to go here saying that, oh, it's definitely there, and I think we have to remember people just kind of want to watch TV, and it's still entertaining, and they're sitting there and staring, and that's what people really want to do. So, the question for us is, can we recapture someone's attention while they watch TV? Can we build something that adds value to your TV watching experience, that makes it, more social, more fun, and hopefully we're going down a natural path that hopefully gets us there, but I don't know yet, and I guess we're going to find out, and we're going to hopefully, maybe this is a timing thing. Maybe it's sort of like the tipping point where 2 years from now, all of a sudden, everything just takes off, and we're just like, well, why did that happen? And we're like, I don't know. So we'll see.
And with I don't know, I think we're going to open up to the audience. Somebody back there. Do we have a mic? Oh, there we go.
Hey, I got one question. We heard a lot about the impact on marketing and viewing experience, but we actually didn't talk about the monetization. So I wanted to hear your pick on whether you think the monetization is going to happen directly through commerce features building on top of these apps, or do you see an indirect monetization in the sense of advertising impact through behavioral targeting, cookies on second devices, stuff like this?
So at least with our platform, that's in fact why we focus so much on participation. It's clear that the longer you keep someone engaged, the more ways you can monetize them, right? So there's two aspects to this. There's the soft monetization. If you can drive higher loyalty, get them to watch your show more often, you're doing audience aggregation or attracting an audience in a more cost-effective way. But I think the more compelling aspect is the hard monetization. So obviously you can push advertising to them, like any social app. But beyond that, at least with our platform, for example, because it's real time, we can push things to devices as things happen. A great example we like to give in our demos is you put up a post into this live app that says, if the Giants hit a home run, this inning, everyone gets a 50% off Coke or Pepsi coupon. And so as soon as that happens, as soon as the Giants hit a home run, immediately everyone gets this coupon with a QR code on their device. So there are all these really interesting ways to drive real-time advertising, coupons, as long as you have them engaged using the app, and you can make them integrated with the content based on what they're watching and so on. So I think there's a really exciting monetization story there, at least in that example.
You want to talk?
Sure. So I'll talk about the two different groups. I think the media companies as well as us, because that's probably an interesting question as well. I think the loyalty, getting people into the second episode, the 10th episode is obviously valuable in terms of ratings. We've done a number of experiments with sponsored stickers. So the stickers are the rewards on our platform where for the Oscars, Mercedes-Benz bought sponsorship on the stickers that then had the reach onto GetGlue, Facebook, and Twitter. We're doing something very similar with the Indy 500 and Hot Wheels coming up. So that's quite interesting. It's orthogonal ad space or ad inventory for the partners, and that's been very well received so far. We've done about 100 different implementations with groups who are offering extended rewards of one form or another. Fox did a pretty interesting campaign earlier this year where if you earned the sticker for Bob's Burgers, their new animated show, you got a free coupon for Fatburger. And so that was part of the bigger package that they had sold to Fatburger, and that was a really interesting way for them to drive, retail and commerce. We've done things with HBO. I think maybe Discovery, Discovery Store, where if as you leveled up across the season, you got incremental discounts at the online store. Right? I mean, it starts to feel like a real reward. If you've shared that you've watched True Blood across the season and you're now getting 15% off for the DVD set or the t-shirt, it is quite appealing. From our perspective as a company, I mean, certainly the sponsored stickers is an ad share type of model. We think the really interesting play is in the analytics. And so we have over 1 million users right now who have already generated over 100 million data points. So that is, each one of those is a data point of how a user has connected to the entertainment that they've consumed. You can imagine the type of trends that you can get from that around the behavioral patterns for entertainment consumption. You step aside and you think that Nielsen has, I think it's 0.04% a set-top box and 0.04% of the homes. That across the US, that equates to 30,000 set-top boxes. So, the entertainment analytics market is a wonderfully small sample size of data that's driving a significant amount of revenue decisions, right? Ad buys, decisions from networks and whatnot. If you think that 1 million users over the latter half of 2010 and first quarter of 2011 have already generated 100 million data points, as we continue to scale, you see the opportunity to have some pretty interesting insights from this.
So I don't think we have the answer quite yet around monetization. I can share with you sort of what we're thinking. First and foremost is like making sure people will use Miso when they watch TV. I think that's like our focus right now. But I mean, there's multiple paths for doing this. One is, imagine a world where you're watching the Today Show and a Tropicana ad appears on TV, and we've got you engaged through some social conversation on the second screen, and the difference is that a Tropicana ad also appears on the second screen, where we actually can target you depending on your age, gender, and all this other good stuff. But we also can get you to engage. So do you like pulp or no pulp? And we believe that this type of advertising that is connected to what you're seeing on TV is going to add, do something to brand lift and awareness and so forth. Now, it's still too early to know what this really means. So, that's one example of brand advertising getting integrated to the second screen. In terms of e-commerce, I think there's a lot of opportunities regarding, getting people to buy things about things that they see on TV. I watch Glee, and yes, I actually do, and sometimes I'm like, hey, that's a pretty good song, and imagine if I could just buy the song right there on the second screen and then share that back with my friends. And, there are, I think Fox does some of these things in their apps already, but, affiliate revenues there are huge, and a lot of companies that are sort of saying, hey, you can, I don't know if you guys knew this, but Glee, American Eagle does all the clothing for Glee, but, you can actually learn more about the products that appear on TV, and you've probably seen RCDB and stuff they're doing with eBay. Like, I think there's a lot of opportunities around, affiliate marketing, regarding, direct response, but in terms of having meaningful impact, I mean, our audiences are small compared to what's actually happening on TV. So everything we're doing is highly experimental. So if you guys have ideas that you want to explore, we're always interested in trying them.
I would agree this is entirely about metrics, because there's this huge Darwinian arms race right now to capture metrics, very specific metrics about people and their behaviors. There's a very loose correlation, if I'm watching Survivor, what I might want to buy, a tighter correlation if I'm watching the Golf Channel. But in the games industry, the level of metrics that we're dealing with now are orders of magnitude higher than the television industry. We're capturing data points every second from the user. So any opportunity you can get the user to touch something and move it, maybe it's ordering your favorite TV shows, maybe it's while you're watching the TV show, picking the most interesting part of the scene of the character you're listening to or watching. Everything we can do to cause the user to lean forward and touch something is a point of data that we can capture. And that's the level that you need to be at to really kind of build these very detailed personal analysis of your viewers so you can target advertising. And I think the monetization is purely going to be a function of how thoroughly you're able to do that.
And I would just add, for us, it's not about that one-time interaction. It's about building that engagement over time. And for us, that's why we have advertisers coming to us and saying, hey, you have, 33 million likes on Facebook across your networks and brands. How can we engage in that? And it's up to us and our responsibility to use that to create experiences that are meaningful to those consumers, that aren't heavy-handed, that's not just blasting out a message to them, but that's really integrating something into the experience. So for us, that's kind of the challenge where we're at. But what we can say in short term is, even just on Twitter, while we're interacting with Deadliest Catch fans and they're watching an episode on Tuesday night, sharing with them a link to a clip of a scene from that episode that they just have to watch again, and doing that in real time and generating downstream clicks. I mean, for Mythbusters, we can post a slideshow to Facebook and generate 1.5 million page views. So for us, that's also monetization and something that we can see and measure right now.
Good. More questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering, you kind of answered my question in the sense of, from a qualitative approach, are you using any of the Twitter real-time information to your showrunners and to have it guide the content of the show itself? And then who in the organization is actually monitoring and consuming all of this social content? Because from the ad agency side, there's a real war, in a good way, between the press side, CorpCom, communication side, and then the ad agency. And they're both fighting earned versus paid, and there's this real sort of who does what. So I'm just wondering, within, who's taking this information on, who's getting it to the writers, how does it move through the organization?
Well, in our case, our programming is nonfiction programming. So, we are passing along that information in real time. An example I mentioned earlier, Nitty Abroad. Every night after the airing, I would actually pull from Radian 6 a Twitter report of all the tweets in real time, and I would shoot that to the general manager of the network, and she would read through that along with the programming team. Now, in this case, the show has already been baked, but it helps influence how we communicate with fans, what's resonating with them. That informs season 2, perhaps, of a series or other developments along the way. And in our case, we actually have an independent social media team within our company. It's co-managed by communications and our digital media team. It took us a while to get there. I mean, I think like most companies, social media within organizations is evolving. But as I said earlier, we like to view ourselves as an in-house agency. So I'm directly, responsible for social media, but my bosses are everyone from the CMO of Discovery Channel to the programmers with that network to the general manager to, the EVP of communications for the network, and really making sure that social media isn't just a marketing platform, it's not just a comms platform, but it's really its own independent living being that can achieve all these goals, but that doesn't necessarily report to one function.
I'd say every project I've worked on the last few years, television or games, I thought more in terms of the final product that we're actually building as a community. Whether it's a TV show or a game, that is an instrument to build that community. And in each one of these projects, there's always been a identified high-profile community manager that's not only kind of synthesizing all the information from the community, but they're also engaging in conversation, reflecting it back. As soon as the community understands somebody's listening and responding to them, it takes a whole different tenor. Basically, you get a much more supportive, engaged community than people just, think that they're kind of talking to a brick wall. But, and that person, that community manager, on every team has been basically equal to the highest level, whether it's the designer, producer, or whatever. What the community manager says is treated with every, amount of kind of respect and importance as any other aspect of the project.
Other questions? There's one over here.
Thanks. So I'm curious, in the context of socializing around a specific show, how important, has anybody looked at this? How important are existing friendships, and am I interacting with people I know, people who I am friends with who also like that show, versus the fan community as a whole, and using that as the connective tissue, or perhaps the characters from the show or some entity of the show itself? Any differences there?
We've done significant user testing on this, and it turns out that the friend connection matters significantly more, even if it was 2 weeks old, right? So knowing that your friend watched this piece of content is much more valuable to the average consumer, even if that viewer happened 2 weeks prior. What's interesting in real time when it's the like-minded people, or the people who are also watching the show who aren't friends, is the aggregate. And so what's interesting is to know that you're not alone watching this, right? Is that I'm watching Mythbusters right now along with, X number of thousands of people. It's a little less interesting to see them, with their individual names and individual comments, but the aggregate is what's appealing in that case.
And, we're a younger company than GetGlue, but even for what we found so far, it's hugely important for also another reason beyond what you just said. Loyalize is actually a spinoff from a company called Trusted Opinion, which was a recommendation company. And you can not obviously, but it's pretty clear that by getting recommendations from your circle of friends, that tends to be more trusted than strangers. So also just being able to know what your friends are watching and then aggregate that in a way that says, look, the audience thinks this show is 76%, but your friends think it's 98%. That's actually huge from the perspective of just getting people involved in the content and trusting the recommendation.
And that's something we see, I think, for like a show like Deadliest Catch. People feel like the captains are their family, so I think that concept of family extends. But I think for other shows, people do want to have those kind of personal experiences. So what I'm interested to see is how we can evolve this space so that people can continue to kind of amplify the buzz and participate in kind of the larger water cooler conversation around a show, but also have those personalized experiences with their friends and family in real time around the shows that they're watching, even if they aren't on the same couch or in the same living room.
I think it's, people talk about Facebook and Twitter, sort of the primary sort of social TV experiences. Obviously Facebook, it's friend requests, and then you add friends, versus Twitter, you can kind of do everything. So I think it's somewhere in between, and I would say it actually depends on the content, right? So if you can imagine the long tail of what people watch, I have 2 friends that watch like the most obscure things. I don't know where they find this stuff on TV. And for them, they're like, no one else watches that, so the community matters to them because they don't have any friends that watch that. Now, when we're talking about like Modern Family and The Office, generally speaking, you want to talk about with your friends. So it depends on the piece of content. So it actually lives somewhere between Facebook, where it's like, bi-directional friends, versus Twitter, which is sort of, sort of a follow model. So, I think it just depends on the piece of content.
Okay, we've got time for 1 or 2 questions, and there are 2 folks with mics. So I'm going to start with this guy over here.
This is a question for Will. So you really took engagement with the story farther than most of these applications. Can you share with us any sense of what you thought was the most satisfying experience as a result of letting your fans into the story process, and what didn't work for you, or were lessons that you might take for next time?
Well, oddly enough, one of the most satisfying experiences was after one of our episodes, the guy who originally came up with the core of the idea came back on the community and was really upset. He thought that we had kind of taken the story off in just the tone of the show in a different direction than he was envisioning. And a lot of other people kind of chimed in and said, no, that was a better direction, or no, you were right. And, but basically, that's the point at which you understand that how deeply you're emotionally engaging these people, that they really feel that they own the show, and they're driving it. And they really, the fact that they're getting upset about it is actually, in my mind, a good thing, that you've really kind of captured that emotional engagement rather than them being detached and saying whatever. They continually surprised us in terms of how pragmatic they were. Because from the very beginning, we said blank slate, half-hour show, what's it going to be? I was afraid they wanted to do Battlestar Galactica or some huge high-budget space opera thing. But they actually kind of zeroed in and said, well, no, we think, like Twilight Zone was a really, tight, fairly low-budget show that told good humanistic stories. And I was really impressed how the community, in some sense, reined in the ambitions of a few kind of yahoos. And through consensus, actually came up with something that was well within the boundaries, very doable, and amazingly pragmatic. Downside, really, it's kind of like the herding cats thing. But, there was a lot of technical issues in terms of, internet time is operating in minutes and hours. Television production time is operating in days and weeks. Making those two worlds mesh was very, very tricky. And I think that our tools at first were evolving through the whole process of the first season. The tools, we actually had online tools where people were proposing storyline ideas in this branching tree and then voting on the branching tree and all that. And we had apps, on the iPad and iPhone, et cetera. I wish those tools had been more evolved at the beginning of the season. By the end of the season, they were very well evolved. But I felt like we lost a lot of early contributors because these tools were just not quite as polished and as approachable as they could have been.
Okay, last question.
Well, my question was more or less the same, actually, Will. But it's actually about the myth of consensus-driven content. Is it a myth that that consensus building milks out any kind of uniqueness or quality? Because I haven't seen the show, I confess.
Well, one of the things that we did that was kind of unique is that we basically ended up with this process where the community could brainstorm 100 ideas or 1,000, whatever they wanted to. But they would also rate these ideas as a community. And so the top 10 ideas would bubble to the top. But then we had our editorial team, our production team, look at those 10 ideas and say, okay, we can shoot those 5, but not these. Or we think that's kind of a bad. So the production team was free to basically editorialize at that level and then give those 5 ideas back to the community and say, now let's vote. These are the 5 we think we can make. So I think it was very crucial that we inserted that editorial voice of the production team in the middle. And we ended up with shows that were much higher quality. Plus, they were also able to, within the show, insert a lot of things that the fans, the fans were in some sense creating a graphic storyboard, but we could add new elements and scenes and ideas that were kind of like red herrings or Easter eggs or what's in the box, magic boxes the audience could unpack in a later episode. And that's what drove a lot of the kind of surprise and I think that almost negotiated compromise or a consensus between the production team and the community worked really well as opposed to just flat crowdsourcing it.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for the panel. I want to thank everybody who stayed here when there's lunch right outside. And just want to wrap it up. Thanks a lot.
In person, so I really appreciate it.